Hello everyone. Today we are going to read our fourth chapter, The Delhi Sultanate, AD 1206 to AD 1526. New words to remember. Sultanate, a kingdom of a Muslim ruler, Sultan. Chalisa, a group of 40 powerful nobles formed by Iltutmish to help him in suppressing his enemies. Mongols, warrior tribes who lived on the borders of ancient and medieval China. They were domiciled in Mongolia. Ulemas, the men who are recognized as experts in Islamic theology. Ikta system, the system of giving land grants instead of cash payments for services rendered. Kharaj, land tax. Khamas, tax levied on booty captured in war. Muqaddam, village headman. The Turkish invaders were newcomers to India. They expanded the Muslim frontiers substantially. Muhammad Ghori died in AD 1206. His empire was divided among his generals. Qutbuddin Aibak, the general of his Indian provinces, suppressed other governors. He declared himself the Sultan of Delhi. In AD 1206, he laid the foundation of the Delhi Sultanate. His dynasty was known as the Slave Dynasty because Qutbuddin himself was a slave of Muhammad Ghori. Iltutmish and Balban had also been slaves in their early career. As many as 5 dynasties ruled over Delhi until Babur started the rule of the Mughals. Slave Dynasty AD 1206 to AD 1290. Khilji Dynasty AD 1290 to AD 1320. Tughlaq Dynasty AD 1320 to AD 1414. Sayyid Dynasty AD 1414 to AD 1451. And Lodi Dynasty AD 1451 to AD 1526. Sources of information about the Delhi Sultanate. The inscriptions, coins, and the monuments like forts, mosques, tombs, and temples provide ample information about the history of this period. In addition to these, we have travelers' accounts and court chronicles that provide information about events and lives of kings and ordinary people. The court chronicles means Tariq or an account of historical events. Such accounts are mainly in Persian and partly in Arabic. The authors were wise and learned men. Some of them had an official position and spent a lot of time at the court of a king. Ziauddin Barani wrote Tarikh-e-Firoz Shahi. It begins with the accession of Balban and comes down to the early years of Firoz Tughlaq. Minhaj-e-Siraj wrote on the early history of the Delhi Sultanate. Not much information about the life of ordinary people. The authors or historians have given an excellent description of some of the major events, but there were reasons why these chronicles failed to provide much information about the life of ordinary men and women. Firstly, they had an official position. For example, Ziauddin Barani had an important post in the revenue department. Their whole effort was to please the sultans who rewarded them with gifts and money. How could they depict people's poverty and misery? Secondly, they lived in cities. They had no opportunity of going to the villages and see how ordinary people lived there. Bias in their account. The authors seem to be biased. They colored their account with their own personal opinions. Minhaj-e-Siraj was a great admirer of Balban. He paints him as a great administrator free from all faults. Minhaj-e-Siraj failed to see that Balban was intolerant of the religion of the vast majority of his subjects, that is, the Hindus. Minhaj-e-Siraj showed bias against Razia Sultan because she was a woman. Razia Sultan was brave and energetic, but Minhaj-e-Siraj, like other nobles, would not like to be ruled by a woman. According to him, women are supposed to be subordinate to men. Ziauddin Barani was a highly educated man. He knew the duties of a historian, yet he was not free from bias and prejudices. Slave Dynasty AD 1206 to AD 1290. Qutbuddin Aibak AD 1206 to AD 1210. Qutbuddin Aibak had begun his career as a humble slave of Muhammad Ghori. He rose to power after his master's death in AD 1206. He consolidated his power through matrimonial alliances. Being a slave, he had a difficult time in overcoming the resistance of his nobles and suppressing internal revolts and external invasions. He constructed the first Islamic monuments, the Quwwat-ul-Islam Mosque, one each at Delhi and Ajmer. He also started the construction of the Qutub Minar in memory of the Sufi saint Qutbuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki. It was completed by Iltutmish. He died in AD 1210 during a fall from a horse while playing Chaugan polo at Lahore. Iltutmish AD 1211 to AD 1236. Iltutmish was a slave of Qutbuddin Aibak and later became his son-in-law. Sensing the resentment of nobles, he created a group of 40 powerful nobles known as Chalisa or the 40 to help him in suppressing his enemies. Kabacha was the ruler of Multan and occupied parts of Punjab. Tajuddin Yildiz was the ruler of Ghazni and wanted to annex Indian territories. Iltutmish defeated both of them. There were revolts in the Gangetic Valley from Rajput rulers and other governors. Iltutmish defeated them all and firmly established the Turkish rule. Razia Sultan AD 1236 to AD 1240. Razia Sultan came to the throne after her father Iltutmish died in AD 1236. Being a woman, she had to face great opposition and rebellion from the nobles. She was very brave. She rode horses and led her army in the battlefield. She was, however, defeated by Altunia, the governor of Sirhind and the leader of the rebels. She later married Altunia to recover the throne. The nobles, however, plotted against her and she was put to death in AD 1240. Ghiyasuddin Balban AD 1265 to AD 1287. After about 6 years of internal strife, Nasiruddin Mahmud, the youngest son of Iltutmish, ascended the throne. He was pleasure-loving, weak and inexperienced. He left the administration to his advisor Ghiyasuddin Balban. All the powers of the Sultan were now in his hands. For 20 years he acted like a prime minister. After Nasruddin's death in AD 1265, Balban occupied the throne. He took many steps to consolidate his position. He also crushed many revolts and ruled with an iron hand. With his stern and bold policy, he created fear and respect in the minds of people. He established peace and order in the country. He also reorganized the army and posted a strong force in the northwest. The Mongols were creating great trouble there. Balban destroyed the group of 40 which had become very powerful. The nobles stood silently in the court. They had to kneel and touch the ground with their forehead in salutation known as sajda. Khilji dynasty AD 1290 to AD 1320. Balban's successors were very weak. A grandson of Balban was murdered in AD 1290 and the Sultanate passed into the hands of the Khiljis. Jalaluddin Khilji AD 1290 to AD 1296 was the first ruler of this dynasty. He sent his nephew Alauddin on a mission to conquer Devagiri in Deccan. He was victorious there. When he returned to Delhi with fabulous riches, Jalaluddin came forward to greet him but was treacherously stabbed by Alauddin. Alauddin Khilji AD 1296 to AD 1316. Alauddin Khilji was a brilliant general and an able administrator. He dreamt of becoming a second Alexander. His conquest included annexation of Gujarat and Malwa in AD 1297, Ranthambore in AD 1301 and the fort of Chittor in Mewar in AD 1303. It was during his attack on the fort of Chittor that the Rajput women performed Johar. They preferred to perish in flames rather than to submit to the enemy. Alauddin Khilji needed money to maintain a large army. He raised the taxes on wealthier people. He also kept watch on the revenues collected by his nobles. Control of the market. Alauddin Khilji had the ambition of conquering the whole of India. A huge army was needed to fulfill such ambitions. The soldiers had to be fed well. Therefore, he fixed the prices of food grains, cloth, and other essential commodities. The merchants had to sell all commodities at fixed rates. If they failed to carry out these orders, they were punished. Although this was done to benefit the soldiers, ordinary people also benefited from it. Conquest of the South. Alauddin Khilji was the first Sultan of Delhi who conquered the southern India. He entrusted his military commander Malik Kafur with the task of the conquest of Deccan. Between AD 1309 and AD 1313, the Yadavas of Devgiri, the Kakatiyas of Warangal, Hoysalas of Dwarasamudra, and the Pandyas of Madurai were subdued. The rulers of Dwarasamudra and Warangal gave all their wealth and elephants to Malik Kafur. The rulers of southern India were allowed to rule on promise of paying the tribute regularly. During Alauddin Khilji's regime, the Mongols raided the Sultanate of Delhi a number of times, but he was successful in keeping the Mongols under check. Alauddin Khilji's empire was as large as that of Emperor Ashoka. Ghazi Malik, a general, got Khusro Khan, the last ruler of the Khilji dynasty, murdered. He then occupied the throne of Delhi. Case study: Tughlaq dynasty, AD 1320 to AD 1414. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, AD 1320 to AD 1325. Ghazi Malik put an end to Khilji dynasty. He took the title of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq Shah and ascended the throne in AD 1320. He conducted campaigns against Warangal, Odisha, and Bengal to expand his kingdom. He died in AD 1325 when a pavilion built for a public reception in his honor collapsed. Muhammad bin Tughlaq, AD 1325 to AD 1351. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was a great scholar and the only sultan to have received good education. He has often been described as a mixture of opposites. He was kind as well as cruel. He was wise, yet at times he behaved unwisely that resulted in great misery to the people. Taxation in Doab. The territory between the Ganga and the Yamuna is considered very fertile and is known as Doab. In order to increase revenue, Muhammad bin Tughlaq increased the rate of tax and ordered his officials to realize the tax strictly. This was done at a time when there occurred a famine in the Doab because of failure of rain. Hundreds of people fled to jungles because of torture and misery. The land became barren. He later provided liberal relief, but then it was too late. Transfer of capital. In AD 1327, Muhammad bin Tughlaq decided to transfer his capital from Delhi to Devagiri in Deccan because Devagiri was situated in the middle of his kingdom. He ordered all his nobles, officials, learned men, and many others to shift to the new capital, which was renamed Daulatabad. In spite of many arrangements, the distance of 1500 km was too long for people to bear the hardship of the journey. As soon as the Sultan realized that the scheme had failed, he ordered the people to return to Delhi. This brought more misery to the people. Token currency. Muhammad bin Tughlaq had lost a great deal of his wealth due to bad decisions. He decided to introduce token currency in brass and copper in place of gold and silver. He issued an order that the people should use and accept these coins just like gold and silver coins. This experiment also failed. Gold and silver coins disappeared from the market, and forged coins manufactured by people at their homes came into circulation. Trade and business came to standstill. The treasury became empty and the prestige of the empire suffered. Plans of conquest. Muhammad bin Tughlaq wanted to conquer Persia, Iran, and China. For about a year, he went on making preparations. Ultimately, he had to give up this project. This put a heavy strain on the royal treasury. Muhammad bin Tughlaq's personal life was marked by a high standard of morality. He was a great scholar, loved fine arts and music, but as a ruler, he failed. He lacked practical wisdom. He inherited a vast kingdom, but at the end of his death, it was considerably reduced in size. His weakness resulted in repeated revolts in many parts of the kingdom. Firoz Shah Tughlaq, AD 1351 to AD 1388. Muhammad bin Tughlaq died in AD 1351. According to Badauni, the Sultan was freed of his people and they of him. He was succeeded by his cousin Firoz Shah Tughlaq. Firoz Shah Tughlaq faced a difficult situation. The empire was shrinking. The army, the nobles, and the ulemas all wished to have a greater say in the administration of the empire. He, though a distinguished military leader, lacked courage and conviction. He failed in his two expeditions against Bengal, which he lost forever. He also made no efforts to reconquer Deccan. Thus, Firoz Shah Tughlaq's reign was a reign of peace. The welfare of the people became his primary interest. He took efforts to improve cultivation. He reclaimed wasteland and brought it under farming. He repaired old canals and dug new ones. He reduced the taxes. He was a great builder and built towns, schools, madrasas, mosques, and hospitals. He built a new capital at Delhi and named it Firozabad. Firoz Shah Tughlaq proclaimed himself a true Muslim king. Unfortunately, he was intolerant towards other religions. He could not tolerate even the Shias. He imposed Jizya tax on the non-Muslims. He thus set the Hindu subjects against him. Firoz Shah Tughlaq's successors. Firoz Shah Tughlaq's successors were incompetent. After his death in AD 1388, his descendants rose against each other. The empire started disintegrating. Only Punjab and Delhi remained under the control of the Tughlaqs. Invasion of Tamerlane AD 1398. Tamerlane, Timur the Lame, better known as Tamerlane, had risen to power in Central Asia. In AD 1398, Tamerlane attacked Delhi and did not face much resistance. Like other Mongol invaders, he started looting the terrorizing people. When they resisted, he ordered their massacre. This terror lasted for about a fortnight. He then left Delhi and on his way back he looted Meerut, Haridwar, Nagarkot, and Jammu. Besides the wealth, he took a large number of artisans, craftsmen, and builders to Samarkand. Sayyid dynasty AD 1414 to AD 1451. Temur entrusted the governance of Multan, Lahore, and Dipalpur to his deputy Khizr Khan. Timur died in AD 1405. The Tughlaq kingdom somehow managed to continue till AD 1413. Khizr Khan occupied Delhi in 1414. He laid the foundation of the Sayyid dynasty. He was the most able ruler of this dynasty. He died in AD 1421. His successors were all very weak. Lodi dynasty AD 1451 to AD 1526. During the rule of Sayyids, one of their Afghan officers, Behlol Lodi, AD 1451 to AD 1489, rose to great prominence and became the governor of Punjab. In AD 1451, he seized Delhi and raised himself to the throne. He AD 1451 to AD 1489 recovered Sindh and Mewar. He treated the nobles as his equals. He tried to win their confidence by giving them gifts and land grants as zagirs. With their help, he ruled for about 38 years. Sikandar Lodi, AD 1489 to AD 1517. Sikandar Lodi succeeded Behlol Lodi. He suppressed rebellious chiefs. He was the greatest of the Lodi kings. He moved the capital from Delhi to Agra so that he could control the kingdom better. He is known for his hatred towards the Hindus. Ibrahim Lodi, AD 1517 to AD 1526. Ibrahim Lodi failed to keep the nobles in good humor. Lodi kings were Afghans. Much of their strength depended on the loyalty of the Afghan nobles. These nobles became jealous of his power and success. A powerful Afghan noble, Daulat Khan Lodi, invited Babur to invade India. In AD 1526, Babur, a descendant of Timur, established the Mughal Empire in India. Administration under Delhi Sultanate. The Muslim state was a theocracy. The Sultan ruled in the name of God and Islam was the religion of the state. Central administration. The Sultan and the high officials. The Sultan was at the head of both civil and military administration. He carried on the administration with the help of a number of ministers. The most important of these was the Wazir or the Chief Minister. Other key officials were the Diwan, the Finance Minister, and the Qazi, Chief Judge. The Army. The standing army was directly under the control of the Sultan. Besides the standing army, iqtadars were also required to supply the forces through provincial governors. The army minister was known as Diwan-e-Aris. Justice. In case involving Muslims, justice was based on Shariat or the Islamic law. It was usually administered by the Qazi judge. Provincial administration. The empire was divided into a number of provinces. Some of the provinces were administered by governors called Naib Sultan. Some other provinces were administered by the defeated rulers who had been allowed to rule on payment of regular tribute. They were also required to assist the Sultan in times of war. Local administration. The provinces were divided into sheikhs, each under a sheikhdar. Each sheikh was divided into a number of parganas, which were like the modern day districts. The village was the smallest unit of administration. Each village had a revenue officer called Patwari. It had its own panchayat to settle disputes. Economic conditions. Agriculture was the most important economic activity. It was the chief source of income of the Sultanate. Indians produced many crops such as rice, sugarcane, oilseeds, and cotton. Firoz Shah Tughlaq built many canals. Our people were masters of many crafts such as weaving of woolen and silk cloth, jewelry making, metalwork, and stonework. Delhi, Jaunpur, Lucknow, and Cambay were well known industrial centers during the medieval age. India had commercial relations with countries of Central and West Asia, East Africa, and China. Bengal was the chief port for trade with China and East Indies. The nobles and Iqta system. The nobles were a powerful force in the Sultanate period. Most of the nobles were Turkish or Afghans in origin. Most of the provincial governors, military commanders, and high ranking officials in the government came from this class. Instead of paying salary to an officer in cash, he was granted a certain revenue asking from a piece of land or village reserved for the purpose. The land grants were known as iktas and their holders were called iktadars or muktis. This was known as the ikta system. Under this system, out of the revenue that the officer collected, he kept a certain amount as his salary and another sum for maintaining the soldiers for the sultan. In some cases, a part of the revenue was sent to the sultan. The muktis maintained law and order in their iktas. They were also required to supply soldiers to sultan in times of war. Control over muktis. The muktis were expected to keep a detailed account of income and expenditure concerning their iktas. Rulers like Balban, Alauddin Khilji, and Sikandar Lodi could keep their nobles under proper control. But most of the sultans failed to bring the nobles under proper discipline. Control over muktis was easier if the land grants were not hereditary. But when a title passed on from father to his son, it became difficult to manage the muktis. Ibn Battuta's observations. Ibn Battuta, a traveler from Morocco, Africa, reached India in AD 1333. He spent many years at the court of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He has left an interesting account of India of his times. It is clear from Ibn Battuta's account that Muhammad bin Tughlaq had contradictory qualities. Sometimes he was very humble, but at other times he would inflict severe punishments for even ordinary offences. According to Ibn Battuta, the country was in a state of disorder and travelling from one place to another was unsafe. He says some chieftains live in thick bamboo forests. The bamboos protect the rulers as if they are living in a fort. Inside the strong bamboo walls are their cattle and their crops. The rains last 3 or 4 months in a year in these regions. Therefore, there is also sufficient water for them within. These rulers could not be conquered easily. For this, a strong army was needed, which would cut down the bamboo forests using some very sharp tools. The Circle of Justice. Fakhr Mudabbir, a 13th century writer, wrote that the rulers and military commanders should promote the interest of the peasants. Why should they? This is because a successful ruler should have a large army to support them. The soldiers cannot live comfortably without a good salary. In order to pay them a good salary, the rulers need revenues. The revenues came from the peasants, but the peasants can pay revenue only when there is a peace and prosperity in the kingdom. The rulers should therefore ensure justice for the peasants. So this was our chapter, the Delhi Sultanate. If you have any doubt or query, you can ask me in the comment box below. Thank you everyone.